back. Today we are going to talk about Beowulf, and we are going to be reviewing pages 50 through 61. One of the first things we're going to go over today is a caesura. Caesura are midline pauses. So in any given sentence, a place where the poet would pause in order to give more effect and rhythm to the poetry. 33 through lines 235, the rhythm of the lines reflects the relentlessness, or the ominousness of Grendel approaching Herot. Herot is the mead hall where all of the men are gathering to make merriment. Basically, they're drinking and having a good time and, that kind of thing. So the caesuras in these lines, they affect the action that takes place in those particular verses. All right, let's talk briefly about what Grendel may symbolize. As you know, he was forged from hell hands, as was said earlier in Beowulf. What that means is that he's probably a representation of the embodiment of evil, or of the devil himself. So it's this universal idea of evil or of death. Let's talk briefly about the setting of this particular portion of the poem. Is the setting symbolic? Well, yes, it is. The words and phrases suggest darkness, evil, something menacing. We've got Grendel's marsh and the lake. Those are all symbols of hell. Well, you might ask yourself, why? Well, the marsh and the lake give off a feeling of evil, as though this might be a place where evil dwells. And they are the homes of Grendel and his mother, who are, the embodiment of evil. They represent the devil. And believe it or not, Herot is a symbol of heaven, or of a place where joy and merriment occur, and where, there's happiness and so forth, like pleasure, those sorts of things. It seems to be, the place of pleasure and merriment, so therefore we can associate that with, sort of a lighter symbol, or a symbol of goodness or heaven. So words and phrases that suggest that Grendel is a symbol of pure evil would be in lines 248 through 250, where we hear snarling, and his eyes were fierce, and they burned with a gruesome light. So the poet describes him in very frightening terms, and it tells how Grendel's, even his laugh is cruel, and how he really loves the idea, or relishes, or enjoys tearing these men to shreds and devouring them, eating them. So we really get this feeling of a real beast or a devil. In lines 268 through 88, you could probably think of something that you've seen in the movie. That's where they got this idea of the monster and of evil, to create these motion pictures. So if you think about it, what ways is Beowulf's encountering Grendel reminiscent of these blockbuster movies about monsters? So as Beowulf advances onto the scene in order to approach Grendel, he displays traits of an epic hero. Now, what would some of these traits be? Well, Beowulf shows courage by approaching the marshland. So as we encounter the scene where Beowulf meets Grendel, Beowulf shows traits of an epic hero by displaying traits of courage, by showing superhuman strength, by facing him without a weapon. So when Beowulf faces Grendel, bare hands, no sword, no shield, and he seizes Grendel's claws and prevents him from escaping. This shows traits of an epic hero. So in lines 295 through 300, we have some sensory details here that allow us to imagine the sounds of the battle. So words and phrases with heavy emphasis on B and G sounds. These letters are hard letters, and they give the impression and the sound effect of clashing and of battle and of blows. It gives us the image of a very hard-fought battle. We have alliterative combinations. Now remember, alliteration is emphasis on beginning consonant sounds in words. So bodies beating at its beautiful walls, that's alliteration. And we get that effect of these blows being felt within the fight. Gold-covered boards, grating, so the G, emphasis on the G, as Grendel. So these are examples of alliteration and alliterative verse. In lines 314 through 333, the words and phrases that the poet uses to make the audience aware that Grendel is pure evil are words and phrases and verses like the following. Beowulf's men try to cut Grendel to release his evil soul. So the emphasis on the evil soul are, what makes us aware that Grendel is pure evil. Also that he has described him as sin-stained. Another example of alliterative verse also represents the pure evil that Grendel is. And also that he is destined to be sent to hell is another indicator of his evil quality, or that he's the embodiment of evil because he belongs in hell. And that would be upon his death that he would be sent there, as the speaker and the poet conveys. So what happens is that he finally tears loose from Beowulf's grip, and in the process he has essentially his arm ripped off, and it's part of his arm is his claw. And so, he flees and leaves his arm behind, and in the process, he returns back to his evil lair, or his den, if you will, and he returns to his den to die. And in this scene, the poet describes in great detail, what Grendel has done. He, quote, twisted in pain, and the bleeding sinews deep in his shoulders snapped, muscle and bone split and broke. Hear the alliterative verse in this section as well. You've got emphasis on the S-sounding words, like sinews, shoulder, snapped, and split. And these are lines 337 through 340. So this striking image of Grendel's arm being snapped off really brings the narrative to life for readers and listeners. So how is all of this important to the fate of Denmark? Well, because Grendel has been defeated and driven off, obviously Beowulf has sort of cured the affliction or driven off the affliction, meaning that he has saved Herot from Grendel. So by saving the Danes from the monster, Beowulf has obviously, his epic hero status. And he has, quote, ended the grief, the sorrow, the suffering, that was forced on the Danes by freeing them from the wrath of Grendel. And that was lines 353 through 354. And then, like the typical epic hero, Beowulf has been bold and strong-minded and killed the terrible, seemingly, invincible monster. Just to summarize and to recap what we've learned. So Beowulf goes to the land of the Danes in order to defeat the monster, to save Herot from, the wrath of this monster Grendel. So he travels to Denmark to battle the monster. And again, to review how Beowulf traps and kills Grendel, Beowulf lies in wait at Herot, the mead hall, and then he seizes the monster when he attacks. And when Grendel manages to tear himself loose, he leaves his arm behind, and then he returns to the marsh to die. To review earlier, what drives Grendel to attack so many men at Herot in the first place? Well, He was partly killing out of hunger, which was line 256, but he also was killing because he felt excluded. He was jealous of the men's celebrations, and he wanted to be loved, and he was jealous of their merrymaking. And on a symbolic level, you could say that this creature of hell rages at the sound of happiness and the sound of love and the sound of pleasure. He lives for pain and agony and suffering. And, part of the reason why he would kill so many men might be perhaps that, he has been denied God's love and God's grace. Therefore, he wants to destroy anything that would be in receiving of it. Now, why would Beowulf hang Grendel's arm, from the rafters at Herot? Why would he do that? Well, back then, it was one could say that Grendel's arm served as a symbol of a triumph and victory. And so they displayed that to show this great victory, and it's sort of like a trophy of battle. Back then they used to put men's heads on stakes and show their victories that way as well. So it kind of makes sense that they would put the arm and hang the arm out there as a symbol of victory. So in lines 397 through 417, who has, quote, reversed the bright vein of the Danes' luck? So we have Grendel being defeated, okay? And, this is a time for celebration. However, Grendel's mother is still around, and her losing her son will be a problem for the Danes in that she's going to come to seek revenge. So Grendel's mother is, going to reach out and cause some more havoc. So in order to avenge her son's death, she selects the most loved and valuable warrior to kill in order to, get vengeance on her, the death of her son. And the individual that she chooses is Hrothgar's closest best friend. And, she knew this would really hurt him, so obviously that's what she did. He was, quote, the man that Hrothgar loved the most. Lines 414 through 415. So is the ferocity of battle captured in these verses? One could say that the alliterative verse and the imagery all capture the ferocity of the battle or of the brutality of war. Adjectives like shining, bloody, forged, hammer forged, boar-headed, smashing, stabbing, slashing. So vivid use of verbs like this convey, this ferocity of battle. In lines 425 through 446, in what sort of place does Grendel's mother live? Well, she lives in the evil place, in the marsh, in the lake. And it's dark, and it's a lair, and it's gross, okay? It's gloomy. It's, quote, storm-tossed black waves. We get this idea of under the ground and very, very far down sort of hell. So what creates an ominous mood in this particular section of the poem? You've got the lake so ominous that a deer would rather be killed than to jump in the lake. There seems to be some sort of mist, line 427 through 428, and these black clouds, and all things dark, things that keep it dark, line 428, and also secret places, windy, wolf dens and cliffs, 425 through 426. And trees are covered with frozen spray, so the idea of coldness, not just, darkness, but cold, dark, and wet, all things that most people hate. Cold, dark, and wet. So wind down, snake-like roots. The lake is described as dangerous and gloomy and eerie, and we get the sense that this place is surely a place that the Danes feared. It was a place that was feared by even animals and wildlife. So we hear some of these details that suggest that, Grendel's mother lives in an evil place, in this underwater lair. so that we get the sense that evil is associated with darkness. We get the sense that, this long downward movement as Beowulf travels down into the marsh, into the lake, that it's way down, like hell would be way down on the ground, in this case way down in the lake. So it makes the reader visualize, or the listener visualize, a descent into hell. Especially when we hear that Beowulf sinks for hours through waves until he finally reaches the bottom. So, this movement of sinking down is like the descent into hell. So at the bottom of this layer, interestingly enough, there seems to be some sort of battle hall. Beowulf sees Grendel's mother, and she is at the very bottom of the lake. And inside this battle hall is where they have their battle. So in this portion of the poem, the verses suggest that Beowulf is facing some kind of dilemmas. His weaponry is failing him. His sword is useless against Grendel's mother, and his helmet fails him. And we see for the first time that Beowulf is vulnerable, and he might get defeated. So that is how the suspense is created in this scene. And we really get a sense of a good struggle between Beowulf and Grendel's mother. So we think of things like Spider-Man or Superman, in these films that we watch, where you have the good versus evil scene, where the hero is sort of, he might die, so we get this idea that we've seen these kinds of scenes before, and we sure have. And we see this fierce back and forth struggle between these two opposing forces, and it's the hero facing the supervillain. One's getting a leg up on the other, and then the hero ends up overcoming and winning. Anyway, sort of a lot of modern day movies and novels do this kind of struggle. In lines 540 through 583, the Danes leave thinking that Beowulf was dead. They abandoned their leader. The Danes and the Geats are both sitting at the side of the marsh, waiting for the battle. The Danes, what'd Beowulf do for them? Well, he faced Grendel and saved them from, that evil monster. And what do? They hightail it out of there when they think he's dead. So what shifts in setting occur in this passage? Well, you have the action moving from the bottom of the lake, so where Beowulf cuts Grendel's mother and Beowulf cuts off Grendel's head, to the edge of the lake, where Hrothgar, the Danes, and the Geats are waiting to see if Beowulf will return. The setting shifts back to Beowulf, who swims up to the land. Then the shift heightens the tension because they know that Beowulf has survived. And readers are eager to see and learn that, the onlookers have drawn the wrong conclusion, that indeed Beowulf survived and did not die. And we have the quote from lines 548 to 549, "The waves surging and blood spurting through," suggests that, readers have drawn the wrong conclusion, because obviously that wasn't Beowulf's blood, that was the blood of, chopping off Grendel's head and also killing, Grendel's mother. So is the poet effective in holding the reader's interest? Well, what do you think? I felt that the alliterative verse and the imagery really did pack a punch. And I felt that, it was a good twist to keep the hero sort of like, he might be defeated, but then in the end he ends up winning. So to me, that's an effective way to keep a reader interested when you have the main character suffering some sort of vulnerability and then succeeding in the end. So to review, so today in this lesson we talked about with the Battle of Grendel's mother. Originally, Hrothgar asks Beowulf to battle Grendel's mother because Grendel's mother had taken one of Hrothgar's best friends, the one that he most loved, and killed him. Hrothgar asks Beowulf to intervene and kill Grendel's mother because Hrothgar believes that Beowulf is the only person that could defeat Grendel's mother. So what does Beowulf do after he kills Grendel's mother? Well, he cuts off Beowulf cuts off Grendel's head and takes it back to Herot. So Beowulf finds Grendel's body, and he cuts his head off with, quote, the hilt of the giant's jeweled sword, line 570 to 571, and he brings it back up to the surface. So which of the two monsters do you think is more fierce? Do you think Grendel is more fierce, or do you think Grendel's mother is more fierce? Do you think that one's more wicked than the other? So I feel all in all that, it does seem understandable that a mother would want to avenge the death of her son. That's a common theme in literature and movies, revenge. Okay, but Grendel, on the other hand, was just doing evil things because he couldn't stand the merriment and the joy. So all in all, I think that Grendel is the more evil of the two characters. But Grendel's mother did give birth to Grendel. So there's that. Grendel's mother didn't seem to have as much of a lust for killing as Grendel did. And some of you might be wondering, well, why would Grendel be, this evil if his mother isn't? Well, there might be some underlying theme in there that we'll discover a little later on. I don't want to spoil the whole thing. All in all, that is pages 50 through 61, where we have Grendel being slayed and then Grendel's mother being slayed. So that's a wrap. I really appreciate you joining me today, and I am looking forward to seeing you in my next one. Come back and see me again real soon. Bye.